Sorry, John. Anyone have a message for John since he's editing? Sorry. Apologies.
You know what, John? I'm sorry that you gave up serving your country to deal with schmucks.
Lou, everything handled with the puppies? Everything good?
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you suddenly? This fucking guy.
All right.
Anyways,
we're all friends here. Everyone's friends.
Yeah, that's why I can be like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Because we're friends. We have rapport. All right, ready, Lou?
I don't know what we were talking about.
We were talking about
kickers.
Talking about kickers.
I don't know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Riding the Pine, the only show where they run out of material so fast they have to jump 2 months early into fantasy football to make a proper episode. And with me today, on this journey of ineptitude and mediocrity, I have Dom and I have Lou, and I'm Jake. And yep, we're talking fantasy football already, sort of. It's more of an introduction to fantasy football for those of you who maybe don't know a lot about it, and an introduction to our league, which will be we're gonna live stream the draft, and we're gonna give you updates throughout the season, along with our fantasy shows as the season progresses, because we're only like 2 months away, not even. It's July 23rd. The season starts. I believe regular season starts September 11th, but the Hall of Fame game might be before that, on the Thursday before that.
September 11th is the actual season opener will be on the 8th, but the actual Sunday that kicks off the season, once everybody's on the field, is September 11th.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And so, basically, what we're going to do on this show is Dom has never played fantasy sports before, but since he is a new addition to our little team here on Riding the Pine, as well as he's a new addition to our league, because we had some turnover in that area and we decided to fold him in. So, what we're going to do is introduce you and Dom to the league. So Dom is kind of your window into. He's your conduit. He is also the audience, and he's learning alongside you. Lou is actually our scoring champ from last season, although neither him or I won the championship. That was actually Ryan, and Ryan would be here, except he's a piece of shit, so he's not.
Except for that little thing,
Yeah, except for that little part of him, which is all of him, that is a piece of shit. So Lou, I wanna kind of get your thoughts on how the league went last year, because this is my baby. The league is called the Jake Apocalypse. We actually have a real metal trophy that Ryan currently has in his home, and it will travel around with the winners, and we will sign it. And so Lou, as the scoring champ, as the person who was most successful technically in the league last year, except you had bad matchups at the end of the year, how did you feel about how the league went? Not your personal performance, the league itself.
Considering the league itself, my company, my life, the world, everything revolves around me and my own personal performance, I'd say it was garbage because of that. I can't separate myself from the league, because I am the center of everything.
You were by the way, your team name was Belichick Your Privilege.
Right.
Which I think is a very, very, that's a fitting title for yours. And actually, our draft is in 42 days. It's on September 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern.
As far as the league went, it's certainly the most, last year was my first year in the league. It's certainly the most, it was the most complicated league I'd ever been in. It was far beyond just being a PPR league. But once you had to consider two quarterbacks, you had to consider that the quarterback position, as I've said in past podcasts, the quarterback position in our league is a little nerfed. It is more, you're more heavily weighted towards the skill position players like running backs and wide receivers. It also kind of takes into account not only being PPR, but the number of attempts that you get. Like, for example, a running back will actually will get points. Like, I think every 5 attempts that he gets, he's going to get a point. So, a franchise running back, your Todd Gurley's, your who's another guy who would have been like
AP.
that? Your Adrian, your Adrian Peterson's, those guys who are going to get the ball, who are on teams with inept quarterbacks. I would argue the most inept quarterback in the league was Teddy Bridgewater. Adrian Peterson is just a monster in our league because of that. So even if he goes out there and only has 80 yards and a touchdown, and say he caught 2 passes, the guy's still going to have a monster game for us.
Well, he may be, because that's only worth 4 extra points.
Well, say he ran. No, but I'm saying maybe he ran. Ran the ball 30 times. I mean, shit. There's 6 more points that he just got.
Did he run the ball 30 times at all last season? That would be impressive. Adrian Peterson's maximum carries last year was 29 3 times. Almost. Didn't quite get that extra point. But I mean, that's 5 extra points. But so actually our league is actually structured far differently than any other league I've been a part of before, and it's because I've been in all sorts of leagues. I've been in standard leagues. I've been in fractional leagues, which you get a point per every yard, like a fraction of a point every yard. So if you get 11 yards, it's 1.1 points. Does that make sense? And then I've also been in PPR leagues that also have standard scoring, but they just add a point for receptions to make the wide receivers a little bit more. I was tired of that, because what happens is, in standard leagues, your big points getters are quarterbacks. They're the most points getters by far. And then probably running back, but there's only a few of them that are viable, so those go to the top. And then you have your wide receivers. Now, in this case, if you don't address certain parts of your team as we draft, you're just not going to have a good team composition. So we have this is the starting lineups, and remind yourself, we only have a 5 maximum player bench. While you have to roster this group of players, while taking into account bye weeks and all the other shit that happens, there's so much transitional action that happens. There's tons of trades. There's more free agency. There's more waiver wire pickups. It's just a more dynamic league that people have to be more invested in. It's a lot more fun than people drafting and basically sitting on a team, which I think is boring. So we have 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, because now it's such a passing league. Some players in the league have rostered and played, because of your flex position, 4 wide receivers in one week and done just fine, because there's plenty of wide receivers getting plenty of action. Only 1 tight end, then the 1 flex position, and then this is where it gets interesting. Last year we had 2 defensive players, just any defensive players that you could find. This year we have mixed it up, and we have 3 defensive players, but one's a linebacker position, one's defensive line, and one's defensive back. So now we have to really know our shit, and I think everyone in this league pretty much does, except, I mean, Dom, you're familiar with all the players, and you watch a lot of football anyways. You just have never really joined a league before. So, and then you also have your kicker, you also have your team defense. We're not doing coaches and kick and punting and return men and shit like that. And then we also have 1 injured reserve spot. So, for instance, last year Tony Romo got injured for you a bunch, didn't he, Lou?
He did, but didn't want to throw him back out there. I went heavy with my skill position players and never really came back into quarterback. So I rode and died. I lived and died by how Carson Palmer played, which was, fairly successful for a while.
Yeah. By the way, I have to disagree with the fact that you say that quarterbacks are nerfed. If I look down the line, the average score for, say, a quarterback in the top tier, like Cam Newton was the number 1 overall player with 375 points. Number 2 is Tom Brady at 336. If we look at wide receivers, we have Antonio Brown 396. Then Julio Jones at 381. Then Brandon Marshall's at 350, and then Odell Beckham's at 336. Your top and middle tier players are pretty much equal across the board, and that was my goal. Now running back is actually more nerfed. Top 1 was Devontae Freeman, which was your guy again. And then number 2 was Adrian Peterson at 318 points. Freeman had 357. I mean, no one else scored 300 points that whole season. Doug Martin had 279. So this is just across the board. It's much more. There's more parity, because you can grab a guy that may, like a Chris Ivory. That I'm picking all the players you had. Chris Ivory that maybe didn't score a ton of points, as far as for his team, but he carried the ball a shit ton. Obviously, last year he was on the Jets, but I mean, he's carrying it 20 times, 14 times, 29 times, 20 times. He has multiple carries in games, and that helps his score. So you don't have, even though it's Chris Ivory, who's a decent running back, you're still competing with other people just because they have to run plays.
I guess where I'm coming from with the whole nerfed quarterback thing is, for everyone out there, typically in a league, a quarterback is going to get 6 points for throwing a touchdown. In our league, he only gets 4 points. Also, in our league, the quarterback had more potential for losing points, as in every time he got sacked, you lost a point. And also correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was every 5 incompletions you lost a point. Does that sound right?
Yeah, but every 10 completions you gain a point.
Yeah,
so
and
it rewards.
10, so there's a lot of potential for guys.
All you gotta do is do 66% to break even.
Right. And, so there's a guy like who's going to throw a shitload. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is going to go out there and just unleash all over the field. He's going to have a good amount of incompletions per game. Tannehill is going to have a lot of incompletions. Andrew Luck is going to have a lot of incompletions. So that's really where I was coming from. Is in our league, you're right. They're balanced. I'm not saying they're not balanced. Yeah. I'm saying they're nerfed. As in other leagues, quarterbacks, you can ride and die. You can live off of your quarterback and have shit play from everybody else.
I guess if that's how you're looking at nerfed, then yes.
Yeah, I'm not saying nerfed is in they're inferior. I'm saying they're inferior as opposed to we grade them tougher as opposed to your standard leagues would. Is how they're nerfed. I'm not saying they are below skill positions.
2 years ago, I was in a league, and a guy had Andrew Luck the year he blew up and rushed for a bunch of touchdowns and shit. And I believe it's always been 4 points for a passing touchdown and 6 points for rushing. I could be wrong. But anyways, some people can just ride that guy and count on him for 25 points or whatever, or 20 points. And in a standard league, that's a ton. If you get 10 points from a player, that's great. But you get defenses that could come in with negative points. So now what we do is we weight them with tackles and sacks and shit like that. And it's just so much better because now you're looking at not just like the Panthers, I believe, were the best defense. No, it was Broncos then Panthers. Because they get in, they make big plays, they score on defense. We had 6 teams score in the 300s. That's more than running backs. I'm just saying. That's big stuff, right? So it's cool. And then also the kickers get points for attempts. So we actually had a kicker, Gostowski, of course. He scored in the 200s. So that was cool. So but yeah, actually Ryan won with a garbage team, and I'm not very happy about it.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'd like to hear more about how the season went last year.
So the season, okay. Most people in this league have been on the show, but we have a few that haven't been maybe in the future. I know for a fact that our last place guy, Josh, he will not be talking on Riding the Pine. He's just not into it that much. But Randy, who was next in line, he might show up every once in a while. Actually, lose rival. We also have rivalry weeks in the middle of the season, the meat of the season, and I actually have the schedule right here. So starting week 7, we start our rivalry weeks, and all of them have little trophies that they play for, and I believe they were penis related. Oh, you actually yours is not a dick trophy. Yours was for most beautiful girl in the room.
Oh, that's right. I have a lovely bust of a woman, and it's literally, I guess bust is the right word. It's only her breasts and her face. That's all that is this trophy.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
And,
I guess I just have a dick trophy just for my own amusement. I guess that's just mine. I guess I didn't win this from the league. Is this just... I just have so many dicks in my house. I just forget where they all come from.
It's weird that you've dick plaques. So actually, this year, Lou and Randy, because they're real life rivals, we'll be going probably for most beautiful girl in the room, or maybe we'll change the title. But
how are Randy and I are not rivals in real life?
You are rivals in real life.
Rivals for what? What do we compete for? We just don't like each other.
Fleeky
Breast
hair.
size.
Fleeky hair. You are a business professional, and he is going to be a doctor. And you're both white nerds. Anyways, so Dominic, actually, your rival this year is going to be it looks like Josh, and you will be competing for a tiny-dicked plaque trophy called "This Was Better Than Sex." Well, not really. My one of my best friends growing up, Dave. He's also not on this podcast, but in the league. Him and I forever have called each other homophobic slurs because we're good people.
As you do.
Right, yeah. And so we are going for gayest gay of all the gays. And I believe,
Jake, you've already won that in my heart.
I won and then he won. So this is the rubber match. John is gonna go up against somebody. I don't know who he's going up against. Who's he going up against? David. That's who it is. He's going up for the "I just met you and this is crazy. I hope you die in a fire." And then and then Ryan, who has been on the podcast, of course, and then J-Rob, who was actually the league winner the previous year, is they're in the trophy for the battle for second worst. So yeah. And then if you're and by the way, this podcast is named after one of these trophies on accident. If your bench outscores the opposing team's starting lineup, you get a giant wooden dick trophy, and it's called "Ride My Pine." Huh? Yeah. So this is a we got a lot of dynamic things happening in this here thing. So now that you know the composition of the teams and kind of how the league works a little bit, why don't we talk about Lou and Dom? What do you guys think is maybe a good draft strategy? And I know, Dom, you haven't really been part of it, but you can kind of think about it. We do have 2 keepers, but let's assume we kept no one. What position are you looking for first, Lou?
It really depends on, I don't want to talk about my team specifically, but really how our league works. If you're in a position where, like I said, quarterbacks are a little nerfed, and you're going to be looking at running backs and you're going to be looking at wide receivers. But say you're somebody who the best player that you had on your team was, I don't know, let's say Greg Olsen. If Greg Olsen was your top scorer, which that means you finished dead last if that was the case. But if Greg Olsen was your top guy, obviously Cam Newton is the guy you want to go to because that's Cam Newton's number one target. Or say if your best wide receiver was somebody like Jones, was somebody from Green Bay. Say it was Jones, or say it was Randall Cobb, or somebody like that. If that was one of the guys that you're viewing as a keeper, then if Aaron Rodgers is out there, he has to be the guy that you go for. Something in our league that really adds up, and this isn't any fantasy league, but what really adds up in our league are getting those pairs, getting those guys that are bundled together, getting your Tom Brady and your Gronk. That's actually a better situation. Gronk is the type of guy who can be the highest scorer on a team from last year that didn't make the playoffs. If you've got Gronk on your team, even with Tom Brady missing the first 4 weeks of the season, in the first or second round, you gotta go for Brady. I really think you have to, because is it going to be a wise pick for the first 4 weeks? No, but Brady is going to, that Brady and Gronk specifically, because you got to consider that the Pats are probably going to fall behind in the division. They're going to need to catch up there at the end of the year. That could be your playoff just onslaught right there. That could be the thing that just makes you kill it at the end of the season. So you're playing long ball, but yeah, your strategy has to be based on what you have on your team. So, for example, on my team, I'm probably going to be keeping Julio Jones. I want to stay away from Matt Ryan as much as possible because he's garbage.
So that's kind of contradictory, but it's important to note that players like Rob Gronkowski are not scoring in the 300s per year, but last year he scored 258 points to lead all tight ends. Delaney Walker was number 2, who I had, and Jordan Reed was number 3, who I had. And
not salty.
But hi. But the thing is, what you're looking for are players in these different groups, these starting groups. So tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. You're looking for separation between not just your other players. Like, sure, having Antonio Brown's obvious, but if you got a guy like Greg Olsen, who was the number 5 overall player in the tight end category, he scored 227. Next was Tyler Eifert, who had a hell of a season, 6th. 189 points. I mean, you're talking almost a 30-point spread on ranks 5 and 6. So when you're looking at these draft categories, if by the time you get to, okay, I want to address tight end in the draft, if you are past Greg Olsen, everyone's pretty equal until you get down to number 10.
Right. And, that's another example of somebody is like Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is probably a third or fourth round pick. But if you've got A.J. Green on your team and you've got Tyler Eifert and you're going to be able to keep both of those guys, you got to take Dalton with your number 1 overall pick and not let somebody get him away. So really,
I don't know about number 1 overall, but
truth be
yes.
told, I would. That would be the kind of thing. If I was in the number 1 position and I had A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert on my team, and I thought I could get Giovanni Bernard there in the 3rd or 4th round, something like that. Man, no, I with my first round pick, I'm taking Dalton.
The thing about this strategy, while it works, it's also a bye week hell time if you don't structure that properly, because now you have 4 Bengals on one team.
Right.
So that's why the structure of the league is actually kind of good, because you could stack like that and basically, for every touchdown that Andy Dalton throws, you get an extra 6 points because you have A.J. Green on your team, and it rolls over. And same thing with if A.J. Green scores a touchdown, you get an extra 4 points from Andy Dalton. So it's 10 points per touchdown now when the Bengals score instead of 6 or 4, which is good for you because they have a good offense. However, you only have 5 bench spots, and there's only a maximum of 3 quarterbacks allowed on each team, so that there's always 2 starters in rotation and free agency. That way no one gets fucked out of a starter. At least it hasn't happened yet. It conceivably it could. But it's hard to stay with that. So yeah, I agree with you in certain ways. And see, this is the part that's interesting to me, is the different draft strategies that we have. Like, some people draft purely on hype, and those were the type of people, like, I fell into that a little bit last year because I was like, I'm going to wait on quarterbacks and I'm going to try to capitalize on these really cheap, high upside quarterbacks, and it backfired on me. Last year I drafted Sam Bradford, who had a decent season, all things considered, where I drafted him. But like, he was the 23rd overall. I took him like with one of my last picks. And I got Teddy Bridgewater, who was right below him at 24, but that was almost a 20-point spread. Yeah, it didn't go well for me. I ended up trading up, and I got Drew Brees later on, and then I traded him for a draft pick. But the point is, it's all my other players were doing well, and then of course I have Antonio Brown, and Big Ben went down. But it was interesting. And I'd like to hear, Dom, just how you're thinking about going into this without, like, and you're blind right now. Like, you've never gone through a draft. You've never had a fantasy team ever. We're popping your cherry the hardest it possibly could be popped. And it's just going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
How hard is that? Like, are there scales to that?
This is illegal currently.
Okay, so there's popping it like, okay, friction rubbed it apart, and then there's like bowling pin.
It's right? It's like bicycle. It's like popped on a bicycle seat at 13, and then kidnapped in an ice cream van. This is what. This is the latter.
Okay.
All right. So,
rape jokes. We got them.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Man.
Oh, good.
But anyhow, so based on the league comp and also all the research I've been doing, because I am an incredibly competitive person at heart and desperately don't want to come in last my first season. So I'm thinking of doing like sort of a balance, because honestly, I will be utterly destroyed on a bye week if I just keep stacking pairs.
Right.
But pairs make points based on this team comp, so I might try to get for like a low risk pair and then just go for high yield skill players. Honestly.
Yeah. And remember, we're forced to play 6 skill players, including the tight end, but tight end is usually. I'm the only person, I believe, that consistently started 2 tight ends. And it's because I had Delaney Walker and Jordan Reed, and the rest of the Like, I had Steve Smith who got injured, Antonio Brown went down. I didn't have a very good, I didn't have depth, and I say accidentally, it was a good trade all around, but I traded Jarvis Landry, and later on that kicked me in the ass because I didn't have enough depth at wide receiver to really go for it. But later on I pick up Sammy Watkins, who was injured for a lot of it. Kamar Aiken I was forced to play. It just didn't end up being exactly what you'd want. But it worked out. So at least for the last part of the season, I scored like a shit ton of points. I scored the most points in one game 3 times. So I have the 3 top scores last season. Although Lou was far more consistent. Bullshit. But yeah. So my draft strategy, honestly, is I think of all your draft strategies, and then I try to stop you. And so basically
the Winston Churchill approach. Okay.
Right. Well, basically my idea here is I have players that I really, really like. Right. I draft for me too. But I think about, it's kind of like chess. Like, I think you're going to go here, and you maybe next round you'll go for a guy, but I'm in between. I'm taking one of those guys from somebody. Like last time, a former member of the league, actually Dom's taking his spot, Kyle, ended up doing that to me on accident a couple times, and then I ended up taking a lot of players that my buddy Dave wanted, who ended up drafting just terribly, but I think he was in the championship game. He had like Golden Tate, but he also had Odell Beckham and shit, but and Russell Wilson, who was a really, really great fantasy player, and I hate his face. I hate his fucking face.
Oh, this is coming back again.
Sorry, I just can't stand him.
More Russell Wilson face hate from
I cannot.
So you're playing the role of the destroyer. You see, that's interesting to know because...
Right, because, well, the thing is...
So what you're saying is, if I'm going to get screwed in the draft, it's going to be by you.
Yeah, probably.
Interesting.
Most certainly.
It's a good thing I already know you're garbage.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've been doing this for so long. And with these guys, I just know how they feel about football. I can kind of not predict, but I can get a good sense of what's going on and who people want. And it's worked out, but I just can never get over the hump. And I have a new idea this season, and I'm not going to divulge it. You'll see draft night on September 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, live streamed here on RTP. But also we'll have our team logo reveal on that date and stuff like that. You guys can have a lot of fun. We'll be eating all sorts of Super Bowl-esque foods.
Why would you do that? You're a Lions fan. Why would you know what Super Bowl foods are?
We held the Super Bowl the year the Steelers won it. Don't worry about it. I remember. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll give you updates as we go. But I want to know, what kind of players are you staying away from that have a lot of maybe... And I know it's before training camp, and I know it's before preseason, and we haven't even, they barely taken snaps. I mean, we have rookie mini camps and shit that just ended recently. What kind of players are you staying away from? Is it the hype players? Is it players like, are we not drafting Cam Newton as high because we think he'll break down over time?
Available?
Oh my God. Anyways, Arian Foster went to the Dolphins, but anyways. Is it players like Drew Brees, who was the number 4 overall quarterback, but he's ancient as fuck? Are we staying away from that arm? Is Carson Palmer really that viable a guy? Are we going with Adrian Peterson yet another year and hoping that his Herculean body doesn't break in half? Is Danny fucking Woodhead going to be effective again? He was the 6th overall running back in our league because of PPR. What kind of people are we looking at here, Lou?
I'll tell you the guys who I'm staying away from, who there's going to be hype around, are going to be your Jared Goffs and your Carson Wentzes. I'm going to stay away from these guys, obviously, because in the Rams, you've got Todd Gurley. They are going to feed Todd Gurley. Gurley, I hope you eat your Wheaties, man, because you're going to be carrying the ball 32 times a game. I mean, I don't see them putting everything on Goff. That being said, I think that Jeff Fisher will have more faith in Goff than, say, Mike Zimmer. Is it Mike Zimmer, the head coach of the Vikings?
Sure. Yeah,
Whatever.
That sounds right.
He's going to have a whole lot more faith in Goff than he's going to have in Bridgewater, which to me, Bridgewater is the worst. Bridgewater's the worst quarterback in all of football.
Sure.
The guy's never lost a game for you. I get it. He's never thrown an interception with 2 minutes to go, but that's because Zimmer doesn't trust him enough to be able to give him that play. So to me, he's the worst quarterback in the NFL. And then Carson Wentz. We have no idea what we're going to get out of this guy. But out of the two, if it gets down, say it's in the 10th round, I need to pick another quarterback, and these are two of the guys that are at the top of the list that are still available. I'm taking Wentz, and hold on, it's situational. I'm taking Wentz over Goff, and the reason being, Wentz doesn't have a all class, all pro, well, not all pro yet, but a Pro Bowl running back behind him. Now that Miller is going to be, or now that Miller's gone, I can't tell you what they're going to do. So I've got a feeling they're going to have to put a whole lot of pressure on Carson Wentz. He's going to have to come into Philly, and they're going to expect him to be able to throw the ball
He'll have to run
25, 35 times a game. Well, and then also we're a very heavily we credit running quarterbacks. I mean, running quarterbacks get a whole lot of credit in our league.
They get a lot of credit in any league because they get the same amount of rush points as a running back. Although someone like Alex Smith is sneaky with that because he'll rush for 6 or 7 times a game and get you an extra point and maybe 3 points on the ground because of the 30 yards he rushed for.
Yeah, sure.
It's very
and those
interesting.
3 interceptions get totally wiped out by that.
Now, I want to throw something out there. Brock Osweiler only played I think he started week 10 is when he started playing. Yeah, week 10. So he played 7 games in a row. He only scored, looks like a 20, not even 20 points, 18 points more than Johnny Manziel. 18 points. That's crazy, right?
Well, they didn't put a whole lot on Osweiler. When Osweiler came in, he wasn't there to go out there and win the game. He was there to manage the game. That's what Kubiak put on him. He said, go out there and manage the game. Our defense is going to keep us in this. If you can make 3 or 4 plays a game, we're going to be able to win this game. And that's what they did with him. That being said, I think that Osweiler is going to have a much better year.
I hope so. He has DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Now, and that's another lead in. I was going to say with DeAndre Hopkins, if he was able to make Brian Hoyer a serviceable mid-tier quarterback last year.
Now Hoyer has a cannon, right? Hoyer can really sling a deep ball.
Well, and that's where I was going with this. So if he's able to make Hoyer look like a serviceable mid-tier quarterback, he should be able to do the same for Brock. That being said, Brock's not going to catch him on those go routes the way that Hoyer was able to. And also,
he's going to have to go over the middle.
We've got to anticipate that Brock is going to make a couple more mistakes than Hoyer did. Hoyer might not have had the pure talent, but he definitely had the experience, and he knew he knew what not to do in a bad situation. I think that you're going to see Osweiler improve greatly fantasy wise, but I also think you're going to see Hopkins take a couple of ticks down.
I would not be surprised if you see much more like hitch routes from Hop this season to kind of get him the ball real quick on a timing route because he can get open anyways and he can catch that ball and
he's
turn
big and
upfield.
Strong enough that if he's on one-on-one, he can shed a cornerback any day.
Right, exactly. But I would also not be surprised if Lamar Miller is a viable PPR option at this point, because you guys pick Miller up, and now you have Dink and Dunk Brock Osweiler. You could possibly have a pretty damn good 3-down running back on your hands suddenly, even though Lamar Miller is not great between the tackles, and you guys do not have the greatest offensive line.
No.
It could be a pretty viable situation. That's where Arian Foster made his money, is out of those flats. So, isn't it weird how you guys kind of traded that though?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it worked out. Personally, I would say it worked out for the Texans a whole hell of a lot better. I'd rather be paying Lamar Miller $17 million a year than paying Arian Foster $1 million. Really? I would.
I don't know. $1 million to be probably your third down running back, just your third down running back. I'm fine with that.
Why have him there in that point? Well, because you just
have animosity for all the times he got hurt.
No, because if not, then we'd still have Grimes and Alfred Blue as our two-headed monster. I say in the biggest quotations ever, that would still be your running back situation. So no, it doesn't improve over last year whatsoever. So yeah, I'll take Lamar Miller. I'll take somebody who can actually go out there and can actually carry the ball 20 times a game.
Dom, do you have guys that you're scared of going after at this point?
Honestly, I'm not thinking there's going to be any breakouts among the bottom third of quarterbacks. So I'm not going to take like an Osweiler, or I don't know. It's just a feeling, and I know that things are changing, and that the pairings could be.
The only ones from the bottom third that I'm looking at that could really break out, and I'm going to start at like the number 20. Matt Ryan, Jay Cutler, they're going to be in that area anyways. But Mariota, maybe. Flacco is capable of it, and
now
Andrew
Flacco,
Luck.
yeah, and Flacco's not entirely fair because he missed 5 games at the end of the year with an injury. I'm looking at the list too, and I think Flacco, he plays the whole season, and I think he's in number 15, number 14, not down there at 23. So
yeah,
I think that's a little
you're probably
unfair.
right. He's at 23 on your list on our league.
That's what I'm looking at.
Anyways, he's 25 on mine, so that's strange.
Excuse me, 25. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was going nuts for a second. But yeah, Andrew Luck also is in that same category where he got the shit kicked out of him. And I mean, his last 4 games, 25.5, 24, 12, 20.5 points, then a bye, and then he's done for the season. Like he was on the uptick, right? He didn't play against Jacksonville and Houston as well in the middle of that. So his lowest played full game point total is 8. After that's 15. No, it's 12. But against Carolina, and then against Denver, he scores 20. He probably was still going to be fine last season if he doesn't get his kidney destroyed.
Guys, I'll tell you somebody who I see really having a breakout year. And granted, coming off of rookie season, I mean, how much can you really expect from year 1 to year 2? Breakout year is typically something you say about a guy like Derek Carr. We would say will have a breakout year. A guy who I'm really looking at, who I think is going to be shooting up people's draft boards this year, now that they've gotten a little bit of help on the offensive line side, is Winston. I really think that the Bucs are going to be able to turn things around, and they're going, because they showed a lot of life at the end of the season, and Jameis was out there just slinging the ball around the last 5 weeks of the season. I think that Jameis Winston's going to be he's going to be a great 6th or 7th round pick in our league. Well, 5th or 6th when you consider keepers.
Yeah, I agree, but you say last 5 weeks, and he did have really good stats his last 5 weeks, but I'm looking at his yardage totals. He was pretty damn consistent his whole season. He's in the 200s all but 2 games last season, and in the 3s twice. So, I mean, he's a good quarterback. He could definitely break out, but I'm looking at the people above him: Derek Carr, Alex Smith, Tyrod Taylor, probably not Fitzpatrick, Aaron Rodgers, Stafford, Rivers, Bortles, Manning, Cousins, and that's Eli Manning, not obviously the other one. Payne's not above anyone. Kirk Cousins, Palmer, Breeze, Wilson, Brady, Newton. I don't know who he's overtaking, but he's still not a bad pick.
I'm not saying he's going to overtake anyone necessarily on the field, but I definitely see him being a feasible. That's what I'm saying, a feasible mid-round option. I mean, is he going to be? Is he going to be Aaron Rodgers? No.
He's 15 points away from being the number 12 overall quarterback.
Yeah, and that's after 1 season. So I'm really
that's
excited
3
to
touchdowns.
see what he's going to do.
That's 4 touchdowns, but I mean he's definitely probably worth it. And Marcus Mariota, by the way, I think, are we all forgetting how well their draft went?
Well, not only that, but how well they did
much
grabbing,
better team.
Not only that, but how well they did grabbing Murray. I mean, Murray's a fantastic receiver out of the backfield. He's got kind of that same thing that Arian Foster had. He can go out in the flats and can snatch balls out of the air all day long. So I really think Mariota is going to have a hell of an improvement this year. Getting Ken Wisenhunt out of there was the most important thing. That was the biggest thing for the Titans. I mean, Wisenhunt great offensive coordinator. He's not the guy you want coaching that team.
I agree. And Mariota, by the way, people forget he missed 4.9 games last season. So he's right there in the conversation too. He had 194 points. If he has, pretty much 5 full games under his belt, he might be above Jameis Winston. He had a 40-point game last season. So I guess, does anyone have anything more to say about the quarterbacks before we move on to the running backs? Dom, did you have anything you wanted to add to this? Because I know that we've been kind of dominating.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with you guys dominating the conversation for now.
Thank you.
But actually,
you into that?
the thing,
You like it? Yeah.
okay.
Are you old enough for us to make sexual advances towards you in the form of fetishes? Don't answer that question. Continue talking.
Alrighty. We'll have to take in there for a second. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
yeah. 2 men worth to take in there.
God.
Ha.
And
You just
you're
keep
not
setting.
thin either.
You just keep setting me up.
Yeah. What Lou said with Jameis Winston was actually pretty striking, as I was just looking up. He had pretty decent quarterback ratings all the way up till the end of the season. His completions weren't very good, but he made the yards count where...
Right.
And a big part of that was Mike Evans. Mike Evans of Galveston, Texas, of Texas A&M.
Oh,
Mike,
fuck.
you fucked up last year, buddy.
You know what?
Pathetic last year.
Yeah, but Doug Martin of Boise, Idaho, in the Boise State Broncos, they re-signed him, and he's the best part of their. He's caught a whole bunch of passes. So
Mike Evans was a fucking train wreck. Mike Evans was actually one of my flyers. I took him in the 4th round last year. I really thought he was going to have an insane breakout year, and he did. He had some great games. He was the most targeted receiver in the NFC South. But Evans dropped so many fucking balls. So I mean, really, Winston's numbers.
Evans dropped a whole lot of balls. I had Sam Bradford, and the Eagles led the world like 2 seasons worth of drops, dude.
Yeah.
It's awful. People say Jordan Matthews is a possession receiver. No, you didn't watch any Eagles games last year, then, because the guy has to catch. He has to catch the ball in order to possess it, right?
Maybe they mean like he's into the occult and stuff, and he gets possessed by ghosts or something. Like, what does that mean?
He's barely catching enough percentage of his balls to be an all-star in the AL if that was his batting average. Like, it's really bad.
Okay, hold on. I have to compare 2 sports. Hold on. How does this? All right.
That means
he's catching
33% of balls.
280. All right. Let me ask y'all this on quarterbacks. You don't have Gronk on your team. Say whoever's keeping Gronk is, and this is, you know what? No, forget it. Let's not talk about our league. Let's just compare it to everybody out there. Is Tom Brady, regardless if you have keepers or not, in your league, if he's there you are, you haven't caught a quarterback yet, Tom Brady's there, is he a 1st or 2nd round pick in your draft?
I'm happy with anyone in our league that takes him in the first half of the draft.
Really?
He's missing 4 games.
That's a big deal.
That's 4 games. If you lose all 4 of those games, and it's not because the Patriots could win those games, but you're without a player.
Right.
Like that means you wasted a pick that could be a Carson Palmer, a Kirk Cousins, a Blake Bortles, a Matt Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers.
A Phillip Rivers. Yeah, one of those
sure,
guys.
Sure.
Cousins.
Which and the only point spread difference between them is 40 points. That they made up for that in the 4 games he's gone.
Right. I agree.
He played
I don't
every
think
game last season.
I don't think he's someone who you take in the first 2 rounds. Now, that being said, if you're someone who's holding on to Gronk, if you're somebody who's stashing Gronk on your team, or if you're in a league where you get Gronk in like the 2nd round, in the 3rd round, you know what? This is all about playing long ball. We're not about winning in the first 4 weeks. We're about winning in the last 4. I'm taking Brady. I'm taking Brady there in the 3rd round if I've already got Gronk secured.
9 wins in this league is basically a guarantee. So that means, and granted, we go through week 14 before the playoffs, and then we have 2 weeks of playoffs because week 17 isn't always
bullshit.
that competitive in the NFL. So we have 14 weeks. So that means you have to win 9 of 10 games after that point with Tom Brady on your roster if you're counting on him. You know what I'm saying? Assuming you lose the first any time in the first 4.
But if you think that the Pats are going to be 2-4, or you think the Pats are going to be 1-3, and say the Bills are going to be 3-1 coming out of those first 4 weeks, shit, Brady's going to have to turn it up. Brady's going to have to
turn it up anyways. They don't have a running back.
Well, that's
every running back they have is like it's just a committee thing that just keeps rolling over because Belichick, the only person he loves on that whole team is Tom Brady. And he just allows Gronk to exist.
Well, then let me throw this out there. Who would you be more willing to take? Assuming they both end up missing 4 games, because there's still some debate whether or not this other guy will. Tom Brady or Le'Veon Bell, who are you taking? Who would you take first out of those two, Le'Veon Bell or Tom Brady? Both of which are going to miss 4 games. For everybody out there who hasn't seen it, Le'Veon Bell did not fail a drug test. He just missed a drug test. He just didn't show up for it, which to me I think is kind of bullshit, because if he would have failed a drug test, correct me if I'm wrong, he would have been out for 6 games, but he just didn't show up, so it's 4.
Well,
that's kind of shitty.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's like if I murder someone, I'll go to jail for 20 years, but if I just don't show up for the trial and I'm in contempt of court, I'll go to jail for 10 years. Yeah, I just won't show up to trial. What?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Le'Veon Bell, and by the way, we can keep in our league and many other leagues, you can stash more running backs than you can stash quarterbacks, just because of the availability of them. There's not a lot of viable quarterbacks. This is different. There are a lot of viable running backs. You could handcuff yourself with Le'Veon Bell and also pick up Diangelo Williams, who I had and was killing it. So in the games that he played, which wasn't many, he got injured in week 8 when he blew his fucking life up. But in week 3 he played because he was suspended in the first 2 games last season. 29 points, 32 points, 27 points, 12 points, 22 points. That's probably worth a stash, right? And that's saying 4. And this is only because the running back position is so interchangeable, and you're stashing a guy that ends up being elite. Now, that said, I'm pretty confident that our buddy Randy in our league specifically is going to use him as a keeper. However, it might not be the case, because he also has Aaron Rodgers, Amari Cooper, guys like that, J.J. Watt, DeMarco Murray. So he could be available, Le'Veon Bell. Now, personally, I don't know if I'm keeping Murray over Bell, but that could be the difference again, because he's missing 4 games. That means you got to go 9-1 in the last 10 games, assuming you lose the first 4 because you didn't keep the guy you should have. So we're like, it's a crazy competitive league, because anything, basically 5 losses is the maximum you can take.
Yeah, I personally, I'm taking Tom Brady. I really am. And it also depends on the situation. If I've got Gronk, I'm taking Tom Brady. If I don't, I'm taking Le'Veon Bell out of those 2.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, the stacking of pairs is really big, like you guys have made clear before. I think that Le'Veon Bell is a safer choice, I think.
Yeah, he blew his knee out, right?
Well, he blew his knee out, and that's the other thing. He's coming off of a knee injury, and not only that, we've got so many knee injuries that we looked at last year. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, we had Marshawn Lynch ended up getting hurt. You had Jamaal Charles, you had Arian Foster, you had so many running backs go down last year. That's what I'm staying away from. You asked the question earlier, Jake, what are you staying away from? And I said the hype quarterbacks that came out. I'll tell you the second thing I'm staying away from, running backs coming off of an Achilles or ACL injury. Those are the guys that I'm staying away from this year.
So basically knees and ankles. Like
ankles, knees, and toes I'm staying away from on running backs.
Toes too, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I remember Javid Best with turf toe before he got the concussions was doing just fine. So, and that's Javid Best.
Well, what do you think caused the concussion? It's all connected, man.
his turf toe. Dom, what were you thinking?
I was just thinking. So, fantasy football is basically an RPG, right? You get the numbers to go the highest, and whoever has the highest numbers wins.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
and at the end, if you win, you go dun 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 dun.
It's more like.
Yeah. No, you're gonna get us copyright struck.
We don't like that. Yeah, but if one of your players gets hurt, so you just use a Phoenix down on them and they come back.
Wow.
Got it.
Yeah, wow. This fell apart. Yeah, we'll edit this part of the show out. I'm just not feeling it today. I'm garbage.
Again, because running backs are so interchangeable, basically the top 6 or 7 running backs. I guess Latavius Murray accidentally is in that league, but there's only 2 running backs that are getting 300 points last season. That's Devontae Freeman and Adrian Peterson. After that, we have only 3 over 250. One of them's Deangelo Williams, by the way. And then after that, everyone is in the mid 200s to low until we get down to 18, and Jeremy Hill is 198. So, what are we looking at here? Are we trying to get one of those top guys? Like, I have Todd Gurley already. I'm keeping him because, I mean, I'd be stupid not to, just because of, again, the idea of points over replacement. If we replaced him with another guy that is also a starter on a different team, are you getting more or less? And the obvious answer is you're getting less if it's not him right now. So who are you going after? Are we going after like people like Jonathan Stewart?
Well, personally, feeding off of the get the highest numbers analogy, I'm going to be avoiding potential injuries and suspensions like the plague, because it's all about consistency, right? So if I can get 5 or 6 people in the high ones and mid to low twos, that's going to beat out someone with one person in the 300s and everyone else mid to low 100s.
Sure,
guys. Let me ask y'all this: let's really stick. I mean, obviously, probably to the first round of the draft. Who do you see as that rookie? And I think Jake and I probably already have someone in mind, but who do you see as that rookie who's just going to go out there and be a beast?
Well, Jay, beast is kind of a strong word, but I think top 15 running back fantasy-wise is not unrealistic for Ezekiel Elliott.
I agree. I think Ezekiel Elliott is going to be... I would not be surprised if he finished in the top 5. I really would.
Damn good.
Top 5 is a lot.
Top 5 is a lot, but when you've got the Cowboys who have not had a franchise running back in so long, they haven't had a guy that they can feed the ball to 20 times a game. I genuinely think they are going to wear the tread off the tires with him. They are going to just cram it down his throat the entire season.
Yeah. I mean, you got to stay away from... I don't know. I like bell cows more than I like guys that have 2 good games in a season and make up... a third of the points. For instance, Lamar Miller last season, which is going to be a very hot pick because he was the 4th overall one. He had 2 games where he really lit it up. He had 47 points against Houston, and he had 34 points against Buffalo. After that, he has like 2 20-point games, maybe 3, and then not much, like rarely does he get over 10 points.
Right.
So it's like it's a consistency thing too. Now a guy like Danny Woodhead, I'd rather have than Lamar Miller, even though he shit the bed a little bit weeks 11 through 14. But he's consistently getting double digits. Now he might not go for 47 one day and win you one game, but he's going to consistently contribute, maybe making you win 2 or 3 games.
Right, and I'd rather have that because it's all about consistency, and it's also all about being able to deliver there when you get into the playoffs. If you get 47 points in week 7, well, what does that do for me when we get to week 15, week 16?
Right, and in the playoffs, Danny Woodhead scored a total of 37 points, and Lamar Miller scored a total of 30.
Now, here's another one that you might kind of shake your head at because he was a late round pick, but I think somebody who's going to be a breakout, who's going to make a huge splash as a rookie. Josh Dotson, Washington Redskins. I think he makes a huge impact because let's face it, they haven't had. I mean, who's been the best wide receiver for Kirk Cousins? For Kirk Cousins' tenure,
Jordan Reed's the answer.
Who's been his best wide receiver has been his tight end Reed. That's been his best option. I mean, he had Pierre Garçon for a little while, and he had Jeremy Maclin for a little while, but those guys haven't been at the top of their game with him. No, clearly he's going to be the best option he has is going after Dotson. I really think he's got a chance.
Assuming he's healthy, what you kind of want out of your team composition, because you are forced to start 3 wide receivers. Ideally, your number 1 wide receiver, because there's 10 teams, would be in the top 10, and then your number 2 would be top 20, and number 3 would be top 30. So the numbers you're looking at for him to be a viable starter consistently in that formula would be James Jones, 190 points. He's the number 30 wide receiver. Can he get 190 points? Tavon Austin, Kamar Aiken, Golden Tate's above that. I don't know if he's that good yet. I do think he would be a viable flex option, though.
Well, I'm not talking like the guy is going to be in the top 5. I'm not saying he's going to be that. I'm saying I'm saying out of the rookies. Who You know what? Let's rephrase the question. Who out of rookie players is going to lead rookies in fantasy production this year? I see it for running back being Ezekiel Elliott, for quarterback being Carson Wentz, and for wide receiver, I see it being Josh Dotson.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying if he's a viable starter, it's probably going to be more of a flex position in any league, not just ours.
I could see him being a good wide receiver 3.
I could see him being very useful during bye weeks. How about that? He's gonna be a guy that's knocking on the door quite often, and during the bye weeks when you have your top tier players coming out, he might score 5 to 8 points fewer, but he's still going to produce probably very consistently because Kirk Cousins was one of the most accurate quarterbacks last season, and now he's got 2 targets, and everyone's going to be all over Jordan Reed if they can be.
Right.
So, and they have a good running game. Are they going with that one guy now? I forget his name, the guy with the dreadlocks, which doesn't help because it's the NFL. Why did I say that? Let me look real quick. The Washington Matt Jones is his name. Because they don't have Alfred Morris anymore, who's went to some team. But I think Matt Jones, is he viable now, given that the players on the Redskins that are the running backs? I mean, you got guys like, have you ever heard of Keith Marshall, Darrell Young? We have Pierre Thomas and Chris Thompson are the other 2. I'm really thinking Matt Jones is probably your guy. You know what I mean? He's clearly he's shown that he can run between the tackles. He just was not very sturdy last year. Like he was battling injuries since week 4?
Who is what is your projection? Because it's always fun to talk about the number 1 overall pick. What do you see for Jared Goff?
Wow, Jared Goff. Well, the problem is there's 2 things going against him. Number 1, Todd Gurley clearly is going to be the head of that offensive spear. He's just going to be used probably too much, and I'm going to regret keeping him at some point, but I can't get rid of him. It just doesn't make sense to. If Todd Gurley can stay healthy, that team might do really well because they're a defense ground and pound team suddenly. But Goff he's a good quarterback. He's certainly better than whoever the fuck they had last year, that one guy from Philly whose name I'm forgetting again. I can't remember any names now.
Jared Goff's actually got some potential in terms of statistics, purely. He threw pretty decently, mid-65s to high for a lot of his seasons. Averaged pretty good yardage per game, usually.
Yeah. I mean, he's coming in and he's trying to take over for the 34th best, air quotes, quarterback in Nick Foles, who only scored 76 points last year. Jared Goff will be better than that. However, their wide receivers are, like, their best one's Tavon Austin. They have old-ass Wes Welker. They don't really have anyone else. They didn't really go get guys. I'm looking at all their skill positions, and really it's Kenny Britt and Tavon Austin and Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley doesn't catch a ton of passes, but he can. He did last season. He's good for 4 a game, roughly 3, So if he can be a little bit better in the pass game, and they eased him into the offense last season, even though they're running him a lot, they weren't running him in a lot of not a lot of situations where he'd have to use his side to side speed necessarily and work on that knee. So it wasn't a lot of flat routes, it wasn't a lot of sweeps. It was a lot of right up the middle because they have a good offensive line. It was very straightforward to try to keep his lateral movement to a minimum, although they used him a shit ton. I really think it's just him and Tavon Austin. So I don't know. I don't know if Goff is good, but he's going to be way better than anything they had last season, right? He's gotta be. He's just gotta be. And their tight end is Lance Kendricks. Like, no one's grabbing him. So I don't know. I really have no idea who they could possibly throw the ball to. So, yeah, I would take Wentz just based on weapons alone. And that said, I fucking can't stand Philadelphia's weapons. I mean, Zach Ertz drops every ball that's ever thrown. Jordan Matthews drops all the balls too. And Riley Cooper is super racist. So, Nelson Aguilar last year was supposed to be a breakout player. Didn't work out. Just did not work out. He just isn't good. So, I don't know. Darren Sproles, I guess. So both of those players are going to have a rough go of it. And those defenses or the defense for Philly is going to make Wentz work a lot harder. So I think he'll have to throw more. I guess that's the way you look at it fantasy wise. Is he'll have more opportunities to throw the ball. So who are we good on that discussion, or did you want to add to it? Because I'm totally good to work on wide receivers with you guys.
Man, it's a tough year for me to just start coming in, honestly.
Uh-huh.
So much is up in the air for this season.
It's always like that, honestly. You'll come into every season thinking you have a strategy and it'll get blown up in the first 3 rounds and you'll have to adapt and then you'll win the fucking championship on accident. It's just...
No survive wins first contact,
Yeah. So I guess... what kind of guys are we staying away from that maybe had good seasons last year? Are we staying away from Larry Fitzgerald's, Demaryius Thomas's, and Doug Baldwin's, maybe Brandon Cooks, Eric Decker, obviously Brandon Marshall in that scenario? Are we staying away from these guys now, or are they still viable? Or are we looking at them maybe taking a big drop off and maybe looking at guys like Golden Tate, who are now the number 1 targets, Eric Ebron in the tight end division, or a guy like Mike Evans, who you said last year, like he took some strides forward but didn't become elite. Is he ready to take that next step? Like, are players like Emmanuel Sanders, is he going to suffer from their quarterback situation now?
Larry Fitzgerald could be good if he's paired with Carson Palmer.
Yeah, if Carson Palmer can stay healthy, of course. Which he was last year, and it was amazing.
Larry Fitzgerald really surprised everybody last year. I don't think anybody saw Larry Fitzgerald doing what he did. The guy who I see who had a ton of success last year that I'm going to be staying away from this year in the league for sure. Some of your darlings that came in at the end of the season, like your Stefan Diggses who came online, or guys like Mike Evans. I'm probably going to stay away from Mike Evans a little bit now that you've got Chris Sims and you've got you just said his name a minute ago, Doug Martin down there in Tampa Bay, both locked up and both are healthy. Those are guys who I'm going to be staying away from for sure. I'm going to be staying away from Mike Evans for sure, because now that they've got their backfield healthy, I don't see them having to put it on. I don't see them having to put it on Jameis Winston like they did last year so often. So I'm staying away from Evans this year for sure.
Sure. I'm trying to figure out, is Denver a viable offensive fantasy player team this year? Like Ronnie Hillman, CJ Anderson, that was a clusterfuck last season.
Right.
Also, you got Mark Sanchez or Paxton Lynch.
Which, from everything I'm hearing from my buddies up in Denver, they're telling me the city is in love with Paxton Lynch and they are ready for this guy to take over the reins.
I was in Denver before the draft, and they were talking about Paxton Lynch already. And no one even really knew if they were going to get Paxton Lynch for sure. But I heard, it
should have been Jerry Jones. I mean, the Cowboys should have gotten Paxton Lynch, but
the Cowboys
they shit the bed by taking Elliott where they did. They could have traded back to 10 or 11 and gotten him still.
That said, Mark Sanchez,
acting like the Cowboys shitting the bed is not the default state of being.
Mark Sanchez is a decent quarterback. He's not great. I mean, he's been in the playoffs. He's won games. He's just been on
2 AFC championships. I mean,
he's been on some pretty shitty teams since then, though. But Paxton Lynch is built for a Kubiak offense. It's all about the short rollouts, these intermediate passes, these sometimes a bomb, but not really. It's all about timing routes and reads and mismatches. And I mean, you got guys like Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, even Benny Fowler, who wasn't a great viable fantasy guy, but Jordan Norwood and Cody Latimer, these guys are speedsters that can really get out and do a lot of damage, including, you have Owen Daniels still.
Yeah, and Kubiak loves to run that naked boot rollout, 37 times a fucking game. He loves to run that thing. That's where those guys are really going to be able to benefit. I see Emmanuel Sanders having a better year. Obviously, last year was a complete just clusterfuck. I mean,
I mean, they were both in the top 17, by the way.
Right, but not as far as scoring. As far as scoring, it was, and I'm not talking about fantasy scoring. I'm talking about actual production on the field, actual touchdowns. I mean, for God's sake, Peyton went 1-8. He threw 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions at home last year. I mean, Mile High was cancer for him.
Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders combined for 12 touchdowns.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. On the road,
wild.
Right.
Like that doesn't even make sense to me. Like Antonio Brown, let me count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by himself. And that's through the air. I think did you run for one? No, but he returned a few. So you're talking the production between two of the top guys. Those guys were just volume pass catchers. So, and again, we give you points for that, but we also give points for big plays and big touchdowns, and these guys can do it in yards and stuff. So,
and the other guy who Dom brought up there a minute ago, Larry Fitzgerald. I'm staying away from Larry Fitzgerald this year, even though Carson Palmer might be one of my guys, because Josh Brown appears to be the guy who's going to be the future for the Cardinals, and I really think that he's going to be a bigger part of the season. A bigger part, Larry was playing out of the slot last year, and teams didn't know how to adjust to that. Having this big, gigantic, strong guy playing in the slot, people are going to be able to adjust to that. I think you're going to see Smokey and you're going to see Brown getting more of that. So I don't see Fitzgerald as a viable pick for me.
Man, I don't know. I think Larry Fitzgerald moving to the slot extended his career another 2 years.
So that's an interesting dimension as well to this, because I'm having to pick who that not only who I think is going to do well, but which weapons the teams are going to prefer to use.
Right,
so
exactly.
That could be a potential deterrent for me picking Fitzgerald.
And that's interesting to point out, because a lot of teams are moving to a two-headed monster sort of scheme when they talk about like a thunder and lightning running back system, which has been popular in the past, but it's really popular now because people are finding that if you keep your running backs fresh and you use these zone read protection schemes and you pass out the slot more, or the flats more, you can really increase the production of these guys at a really cost-effective price, so you don't see number one franchise running backs anymore. You don't see feature backs very often, which is why a guy like Todd Gurley or Adrian Peterson is so rare and so valuable to have, because like I said, only 2 guys last season scored in the 300s. After that, 279 was Doug Martin, and he's a feature back. That's why Le'Veon Bell is such an interesting conversation, because he is a feature back if he's healthy. Because there's not a lot of them. So Matt Forte is another guy to think about. Who's going to be the quarterback for the Jets? If it's Geno Smith, I'm staying away from everyone on the Jets offense, right?
I'm not touching... seriously, if Geno Smith is the starting quarterback, Brandon Marshall isn't a top... He's not a top 5 round pick or a top 6 round pick.
He was the number 3 overall.
Exactly. He was the number 3 overall guy last year.
Yeah.
He's not in the top 5 rounds for me if Geno Smith is their quarterback.
Right. Isn't that nuts? Isn't that absolutely crazy? By the way,
it's just 'cause the Jets are
Brandon
garbage.
Marshall scored in every game but 4 last season, sometimes twice.
Man.
That's impressive.
So, it's just craziness. And Eric Decker was the number 14 overall, and he scored in half the games at least. No, he's 1, 2, 3, 4. He also only didn't score in 4 games. I mean, just ridiculous production out of those players, which was pretty much their entire offense, though. So, but they both stayed healthy, but they're both aging. And I know a lot of people aren't. I don't know why people don't like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's just a decent quarterback. He doesn't really fuck up that often, right? Am I crazy? Am I taking crazy pills?
No, I mean he's
the 12th overall quarterback like every year. He's good for 15 to 20 points automatically.
Yeah, he's not the guy who's going to he's never going to go out there and lose the game for you, but he's also not the guy who's going to put it on his back. He's not going to pull a Favre. He's more likely to pull the negative part of pulling a Favre than he is to pull the positive part of pulling a Favre.
Fair enough.
Put it that way.
I get it. All right, so I guess wide receivers, man, it just looks weird. Like, I'm still scared of Jeremy Maclin, even though he had a good season. I just don't know. Travis Benjamin's an interesting one because he's going to the San Diego. Should have been the LA Chargers, but San Diego Chargers. Woo!
Yeah, as far as Macklin's concerned, is Alex Smith really ever going to be the guy who's going to be able to take advantage of a major? I mean, because think about it, who was Alex Smith's number 1 target through the first 4 weeks of the season last year? It was Jamaal Charles.
Kelsey. Jamaal Charles.
He was the number 1 option. So Alex Jones. Alex Smith.
Alex Jones. I am a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man with blood.
I'm a quarterback. I throw the ball. That's what we do. I think that Captain Checkdown there in Alex Smith is definitely not going to provide a potential for Macklin.
Sure. Tom, do you have anything to add to the wide receivers before we move on to the tight ends?
I was gonna do some stat mining, but I don't know if it would really help. Although it's very interesting, Jamaal Charles, incredibly fast 40-yard dash.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. But he's also had 2 knee surgeries now. 3?
Yeah,
3 knee surgeries? 2.
I thought it was only 2. Yeah, I was like, is there...
He got hurt against the Lions, then he got hurt last year again, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's move on to tight end. And this is
your team again.
This is really where a lot of teams make up a lot of points. If you have a good tight end who you only expect 10 points from, 8 points from, you can really, really make up a lot. Because at number 10, you're averaging 9.9 points a game. At number 9, you're averaging 10.7. That's a whole extra point just by that. And then if you go up 2 more spots, it's 11.6. So you're talking a very small window where it's 2 points, 3 points a game, which is very quickly adds up. That's like having a whole extra player on your team. And I always look at the tight end this way. If I can couple him with a quarterback, that's great. That's super great. But if I say, okay, 10 points to the tight end, and then anytime any other player has a deficiency, if that tight end scores over 10, I just kind of in my head apply those points to that player, and it's kind of like bonus points. If you can get over 10, and this is Jason Witten or above last year, if you can get over 10 points a game from your tight end, you're just in such a better competitive position, because that makes up for like, oh, they blocked one of my field goals, or my quarterback threw a junk time interception trying to throw for a Hail Mary, a freak fumble here or there. It just makes up for mistakes that your team could make. And so really Rob Gronkowski is the guy. Are people like Jordan Reed really going to stay at that place, though, do you think, Lou?
I think Jordan Reed is still going to be there, because I think that Kirk Cousins is very overinflated compared to what he really is, to what people's perception of him is, and he's not all of a sudden, oh, you like that? This guy's not going to be throwing 30-yard go routes at this point. Sure. He's not going to be throwing, be able to have have Dotson go out there and run a curl and be able to throw a back shoulder curl to the guy. He's not that quarterback. He never has been. He never will be. And so he's going to rely on that security blanket. He's going to rely on that dump off valve to him so much. So I don't see Cook, or I don't see Jordan Reed having a huge. I don't see him having a fall off year. Because I don't think that Kirk Cousins is going to go out there and he's going to throw the ball 40 times a game and he's going to throw it 20 yards downfield every time. I don't see it. I think he's still the same Kirk Cousins that we saw a year ago, that we saw 2 years ago, who couldn't beat out a broken down RG3 for the job 2 years ago. He's still that same guy. So no, I think that Reed is still a fantastic option.
So are we able to get excited about any tight ends this year?
Gronk is without his big brother, Tom Brady. So that's a big problem.
So you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who's only started 2 or 3 games in his whole career, played in 2 or 3 games so far. And Rob Gronkowski is a huge security blanket for a guy that's unproven at this point and has been in the system for long enough to know that, hey, these are the routes that are going with the tight end. I don't know if Gronk falls off because of Garoppolo.
If anything, he probably has an uptick with Garoppolo being out there, because he's going to be able to say, "Hey, look, man, let me be your security blanket." And really, that's not trying to shit on Garoppolo. It's just that, look at what Tom Brady has done. Tom Brady takes guys like Brandon Marius and who else was on that fucking team last year? Who else was a piece of garbage that like the Texans or somebody had let go? He had all these different guys who were just that's the whole point. We can't even name. Can you name 2 wide receivers for the Patriots right now?
Julian Edelman and
there you go.
Nope.
That's it.
I can't. Nope. Hold on. Now I gotta know who's on that team. It's Edelman. and
who?
Amendola. That was the one I was
Danny
trying to
Amendola.
think of.
Okay, all right.
I was also thinking Aaron Dobson, but
I was thinking about guys like like Dobson, like DeAndre Carter. Who was the guy who they grabbed out? Keyshawn Martin. That's who I was thinking of. The guy who they grabbed off the Texans. The point is he's the ultimate guy who's taken chicken shit and turned it into chicken salad. I mean, Tom Brady is able to go out there with these no-name guys and turn them into superstars. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be able to do that. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that coming out week 1. So I think he's going to be looking for guys like LeGarrette Blount out in the flats. He's going to be looking for Gronk over the middle. He's going to be looking for those easiest...
LeGarrette Blount is going to be catching passes out of the flats? Have you watched LeGarrette Blount move? No, that's Dion Lewis, James White.
I'm sorry, Dion Lewis. Why did I say LeGarrette Blount? I was talking about Dion Lewis.
Dion Blount caught 6 passes all last season.
Yeah, I was talking about Dion Lewis. My fault. I was thinking the one who they just locked up. No, Dion Lewis is the guy. I mean, yeah, he had 39 receptions last year before he got hurt.
Right, that was in week 9. By the way.
That was in week 9. So he was catching quite a few balls last year. I really think I don't think it's going to hurt Gronk at all. Is he going to be able to thread the needle there on the 6-yard line and be able to put it in down to Gronk down on his knees and have him slide for a touchdown the way Brady could? Probably not. But out at the 50-yard line, he's still going to be targeting Gronk and Lewis a whole shitload. So I don't think that's going to hurt him. No.
Brady's innate ability to weaponize usually mediocre players. I don't know if it's just going to have the same end result. I think that I see Brady's absence in the first 4 weeks as a big impediment for Gronk just because the chemistry is going to be lost.
Sure, it might be. Although, granted, they will be playing preseason and training camp all together to get that rapport in order to prep for the first 4 games. Because, like, Garoppolo will be playing with the first unit in order to prepare himself for the first 4 games of the season, because Brady doesn't really need to at this point.
Right. So yeah, I take the exact polar opposite of him, of Dom. I really think that Brady is, or that Gronk is going to not drop off at all. In fact, he might improve a little bit.
Sure. Now, we in the past in most leagues I've been in, it's basically been a let's make fun of the guy that picks a kicker anywhere above like the last 2 picks in the draft. But I'm looking at the stats and the way our teams work out. And this, of course, we're skipping over defensive players because that's just up in the air. That's more of a theme thing as you kind of just adapt to it over the season. No one really keeps the same players on defense unless it's like a J.J. Watt or, I don't know, Khalil Mack maybe. But the 28th overall flex player, that's a skill position player, was Kamar Aiken at 198 points. The number 1 kicker was Gostowski with 201 points. Are we now valuing maybe the kicker a little bit more? Because what happens is I gave the kickers 1 extra point per attempt. Now if they miss it, it's -2, so it balances out and they still get the -1 for the miss. But if they make it, they get an extra point. So a field goal from 30 yards is 4, 40 yards is 5, and so on. Is it worth maybe getting a kicker a little bit higher? Because again, it's the same kind of theory with the tight ends where there's not a shit ton of them, but the top 10 are worth 10 points a game, and below that, it's kind of a lot of a stretch. Are you looking at the points above replacement situation with kickers as well?
Yeah, you've got to, and I think that's why they've always fallen so far down, is because you're never going to have a kicker who might have 3 touchdowns in a game. So that's why you've always had guys that are going to say, well, you know what, I'm going to go take Diangelo Williams, who we think is going to be backing up Le'Veon Bell for the majority of the season. I'm going to take him as a flex guy. I'm going to take him as a 3rd string guy. Or I'm going to go get LeGarrette Blount, who's still going to get 15 carries a game before I go out and get a kicker. Yeah. That being said, if there was a kicker that you were looking at who you were going to take top, I mean, it's got to be Gostowski, or it'd be a guy like Kuntz. It'd be a guy from the Browns who, the Browns aren't going to be able to score with RG3 this year, I don't think.
Probably not a lot. I don't know. They will move the ball better than probably they did last year, though. I look at it like players like Blair Walsh, who they don't have a lot of finishing power in the red zone, but they're going to get down there because AP is on the team. And once they stack the box, it's like kind of tough for them, and they don't really have a lot of, like, Kyle Rudolph isn't the red zone threat they want.
Right.
I don't know. Graham Gano, He scored a shit ton.
Josh Brown is obviously a guy who you're going to want to look at. The Giants have one of the worst red zone offenses. Now, that was under Coughlin. They had one of the worst red zone offenses for 4 straight years. That's why you always saw Josh Brown in the top 5 in kickers, because he got so many attempts. Now that they've brought in the guy who wears his dad's suits to his opening press conference. Oh, God, what's his name? I can't remember the goober's name. The guy who wore a suit that looked like he got it off the mannequin and it wasn't fitted. It looked like it was 3 sizes too big. Their offensive he's their offensive coordinator.
Ben McAdoo?
Yeah, McAdoo. Now that McAdoo, who's been their offensive coordinator, I don't see a whole hell of a lot changing. He's not going to completely change his scheme. Oh, now I'm in charge of the team. Now I can do whatever I want. Oh, wait, what I've wanted hasn't worked.
How much was Coughlin in charge of the offense, though?
Well, he wasn't. McAdoo was.
Was Coughlin not calling plays? Was McAdoo definitely?
No, McAdoo was calling plays.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then that was expected. Change different. So yeah, Josh Brown's a viable kicker then. So I'm just saying, are we picking them above, say, backup quarterbacks, or is still backup quarterback more important? By the way, the 32nd ranked defense scored 190 total points, and the top kicker scored 201.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, he was calling the plays for the last 3 years with the Giants.
Oh, yeah. All you got to do is run a fade route to Odell Beckham. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I remember how those fade routes look to Calvin. Odell's no different. Just do that. Mm-hmm. It's easy.
Every time.
Anyways.
He's got far better hair.
But, yeah, the thing is, I mean, maybe in a more, like, clutch-weighted scenario, the game-winning field goal is obviously a time-honored tradition. But in terms of just sheer output of numbers, I don't think that they're worth getting above a backup Coob or anything like that.
Sure. So, I mean, I guess that pretty much calls an end to the fantasy football general outlook. So, yeah, as we inch closer to the fantasy season, though, I think we should have genuine debates about these top tier players. Who are we picking over? And maybe we can do some live mock drafts and stuff, and maybe just for standard league purposes. And also, we're kind of thinking about starting a fantasy league of our own, but we don't know if we'd have enough people participate. So if you want that, let us know down in the comments. Other than that,
my buddies would definitely be interested in that.
There you go. So we're also going to be setting up a blog soon. We'll have some articles and stuff for that. So we'll be reaching our full potential. And I don't know about, apparently there's a legal issue in calling games on Monday nights, but we can fucking talk while it happens and not necessarily call it. We could do RTP live during Monday Night Football. So hopefully that's a thing that we can start doing. So anyways, I guess anyone else have closing remarks before we end?
I hope I don't come in last.
There you go. That's the spirit. That's the spirit. You actually have, I believe, did Kyle trade any draft picks? No, he didn't. You are the 8th. You have the 8th pick in the draft, and that's just gonna keep dwindling down. So good luck there, buddy. We'll go into our. I'm really excited to have our live draft special happen. That'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
Everything should work out just fine.
Lou has the 4th overall pick. I don't think you traded any draft picks either. I have what was it? It was some ridiculous number. I have 5 of the top 15 picks or something. Nuts. I'm gonna wreck shit. Just wreck it.
For that reason, I hope you lose.
I probably will. I have a lot of ACL surgeries on the team. Anyways.
Is Arian Foster still available?
For Lou and Dom, I'm Jake, and this has been Riding the Pine, and I'm gonna fucking win, man. I gotta win one of these years. I have not won yet. I'm chasing the dream. I'm chasing the goddamn dream.
As the new guy, my goal in life might just to be to screw you over, but it should be fun. We're all friends here. Everyone's friends.